And yeah, inshallah, I'll be there for sure. So inshallah, I'll be seeing many of you there as well, inshallah. With that being said, those are announcements. I'll be giving it to Sayyid Muhammad Qasmi. Please welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمنا من لجأ إلى حسنكم سادتي سيدي يا أبا عبد الله يا غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء سيدي لأندبنك صباحا ومساء ولأبكين عليك بدل الدموع دما يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. صلوات. Inshallah, today, as you know, we'll be talking about the history of eulogy in the school of Ahlul Bayt. Where does this eulogy come from? What is the idea of eulogy in the Ahlul Bayt? And how we, as Shia Muslims in the West, can continue to contribute to this legacy of eulogy for the Ahlul Bayt and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Before I begin, I was asked to start with a mas'ala shar'iyya, a fiqhi ruling about our religion, something that can inshallah give us some knowledge, so that even if my lecture doesn't give you any benefit, this mas'ala does give you some benefit. So I feel like going with the theme, it's only right that I talk about the rulings behind music. What is music considered in Islam? Why is it haram? And what is the differences between things that may sound like music, that some people would say is haram, but are actually halal, versus actual music which is haram. Music, as defined by Sayyid Sistani and the majority of scholars, the majority of our maraja', is anything that would be listened to in majalis al-lahu, gatherings of entertainment. Something that is only played, that has a melodic tune, that is sung, that is played with instruments, specifically for entertainment gatherings. Meaning what? Rap music? Yes. Pop music? Yes. Even classical music. Classical music is something that is played in places of entertainment, right? People go to actively listen to it, to sit and enjoy it in a show. These are things that are prohibited. Now the question comes, what about if I'm at a mall? Nowadays, when you're at a mall, they're constantly playing music. Is that haram? No. If you are not intentionally listening to the music being played, then it isn't haram. Now, am I saying if you listen to music, you're going to go to hellfire? No, I'm not saying that, because I'm not the judge of that. But the fact of the matter is, music has become very normalized in our societies. It's something that people look at as such a minor sin that it's completely okay. It's not a big deal. Who cares? I'm just on the way to work. I'm on the way to see my friends. I'm sitting at the beach. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's fine. It's not a big deal. There's bigger things that I need to worry about. My salah, my fasting, being a good person, being charitable. But the fact of the matter is, when you actually look at the reasoning behind why music is haram, it's because it changes the way you think. You put on a happy song, all of a sudden you want to dance, you want to get up. You're happy. You put on a sad song, all of a sudden you feel yourself getting a little more depressed. You start crying. It affects your mentality. It affects the way you think. And that is why it's haram. Because sometimes music can become like a drug, something that you can't live without. If we really think about it, we all have people in our lives that need music playing 24/7. While they're walking to class, in class, at the gym, on the drive home, when they're going to work, while they're at work, 24/7. They can't live without it. From the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep, they have to have something playing over and over and over again. That's not healthy. Especially when you look at the messages that are being portrayed in this music. Do this sin, do that sin. Buy drugs from this place. Go kill this person. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's not something that pushes you toward morality, quite the opposite. It pushes you towards immorality. It pushes you towards sinning. Now, a lot of people say, okay, what about Latumiyas you guys listen to? What about the nasheeds you guys listen to? Is that not music? There's a distinct difference. These things are not to be listened to in majalis al-lahu. You wouldn't go to a club and hear a Latumiyya or hear a nasheed. Not something that happens. And if it is, I don't know what they're doing at that club, right? It's completely different. And then you look at the words, right? Mourning. Farha for the Ahlul Bayt. Happiness for the Ahlul Bayt. Excitement for the Ahlul Bayt. Now Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, he has a hadith in which he says, إِنَّ شِيعَتِنَا خُلِقُوا مِنْ فَاضِلِ طِينِنَا يَفْرَحُونَ لِفَرْحِنَا وَيَحْزَنُونَ لِحُزْنِنَا. That our Shia were created from the best of our clay. When we are happy, they are happy. And when we are sad, they are sad. Meaning that we want this intended effect when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We want to feel happy when the Ahlul Bayt are happy. And we want to feel sad when the Ahlul Bayt are sad. Because we are the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt. We want to feel what they are feeling. So inshallah, that's just a little brief intro on music and why it's haram. And hopefully we're able to take some benefit from that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, as I said, today, what we're supposed to be talking about is, the topic was tears turned to ink. The spiritual power of art and eulogy in connecting with Karbala. Now, it's very interesting that today was the day that this topic was chosen. Who can tell me why? Something to do with why I'm wearing black. Anyone can tell me who passed away today? Imam Hassan. Today is the martyrdom of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. And so today is one of the days where majalis are being held and these eulogies are being recited for the second Imam alayhi salam. So when we look at eulogy, poetry, did this begin with the Muslim empire or has it existed before Islam? Anyone tell me? It did exist before Islam. The pre-Islamic Arabians had 5 different kinds of poetry that they would recite. In fact, their entire societies were built around poetry. The heads of tribes wrote the best poetry. They were the spokespeople. They were the people that represented the tribes because of their poetry. The 5 different types were: 1, madh, praise, poetry that was written in praise of somebody or something. Number 2, hijab, which you can kind of consider an old-timey rap battle, right? It was when 2 people were in an argument, they would write hijab. They would write lines of poetry against each other. Number 3 is ritha, eulogy, lamentation. When somebody died, when a tragedy happened, they would write eulogy, rifa. Number 4, ghazal, love poetry. You've all heard the Arab love poetry, right? Is there anything better than it? Somebody might say Farsi love poetry. I disagree. Ghazal, love poetry. And number 5, fakhr, boasting. When people would boast. And so we see the Quran even came down in the same way. Obviously, we cannot reduce the Quran to just say it is a book of poetry. But it came down in a poetic manner, because that was the manner of the Arabs. That's how they got to the Arabs. The Quran is much bigger than a book of poetry. But when you analyze it, it's very poetic in its words. One example. You go to Surah Al-Qiyamah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qiyamah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم. He makes a qasam, an oath, by the stars. Come to Surah Al-Najm. Ayah number 1, Ali. Ayah number 1, Surah Al-Najm. Because you're hafiz. Ayah number 1, Surah Al-Najm. وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. This وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى goes back to فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. Again, he's telling you here I'm making an oath. The entire Quran is connected in this poetic meter. The Surah Ali, the Surah before Surah Al-Najm, what does it end with? The Surah before Surah Al-Najm, it ends with, dang, I'm not even ready now. وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَاسْجُدْ لَهُ وَإِدْبَارَ النُّجُومِ. And glorify Him during part of the night and at the fading of the stars. And then again it begins, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى. A call back to the stars. The entire Quran is connected in this poetic meter. And when you read the Quran and the way it's supposed to be read, it sounds poetic. There's poetry within it. And so when people say, well, why do you Shia read poetry for the Ahlul Bayt? This isn't something we started. This existed way before us. This was just the way of the Arabs. We are continuing a legacy. We are speaking to the people in the way they need to be spoken to. Right? That's exactly what the Quran did. It came down to a specific group of people and spoke to them in the way they needed to be spoken to understand. Now, when was the first time that poetry was written for the Ahlul Bayt? Can anyone tell me? First ever time. Anyone? I'll give you a hint. The author was Di'b al-Khuza'i. Anyone at all? No? The family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they return to Medina. They've just come from Sham. They stopped in Karbala for the Arba'een, and they have now returned to Medina. They don't enter Medina. They stay on the outskirts. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he hires a poet by the name of Di'b al-Khuza'i. Di'b al-Khuza'i was one of the most famous poets in the history of Shi'ism now. But the way he began was he recited a poem for the lamentation of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. He said, يا أهل يثرب لا مقام لكم بها قتل الحسين فأدمعوا مدرار الجسم منه بكربلاء مضرج والرأس منه على القناة يدار. O people of Yathrib, there is no stay for you here. Hussein has been killed, so my tears pour endlessly. His body lies drenched in Karbala, and his noble head is raised upon a spear. That was the first ever poem that was written in honor of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. First ever one. In honor of Karbala, in honor of the battle of Karbala. From Di'b al-Khuza'i. Now immediately after that, al-Baneen comes. And at this point, Di'b didn't know who al-Baneen was. Who knows who al-Banin is? al-Banin was the second wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen. She is the mother of Abu al-Fadl Abbas. al-Banin comes. And now al-Banin, look at this lady. Instead of asking about her own sons, she had 4 sons that were murdered in Karbala. 4. Abdullah, Ja'far, Uthman, and Abu al-Fadl Abbas. Instead of asking about her own sons, al-Banin comes to her and Di'bil looks at her and he says, Ya al-Banin, عظم الله لك الأجر بمصاب ابنك عثمان. O al-Banin, my condolences to you on the martyrdom of your son Uthman. She says, I don't ask you about Uthman. Tell me about Hussein. He says, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك جعفر. I didn't ask you about Ja'far. Tell me about Hussein. عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك عبد الله. Didn't ask about Abdullah. Tell me about Hussein. عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك يا بالفضل العباس. My condolences to you, O al-Banin, on the passing of your son Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. I didn't ask you about Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Tell me about Hussein. عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك الحسين. O al-Banin, my condolences to you on the martyrdom of your son Hussein. At this point, she drops the child, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. She goes to Al-Baqi' and she digs 4 graves for her sons, for Abdullah, for Ja'far, for Uthman, and for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And she recites some lamentation. And it's very beautiful when read in English, but there's a problem. It's very beautiful when read in Arabic, but there's a problem in English, my brothers and sisters. And I want your guys' honest opinion. You tell me if it sounds poetic in English. Because to me it didn't. The words still had meaning. The words still made me feel sad. But the problem was, there wasn't that beauty that Arabic has. There wasn't that beauty that Farsi or Urdu have. It was missing something. And so I'll read the words and then I'll take a poll. And you guys tell me, does it read as poetry or does it just simply read as a translation of something that was meant to be beautiful, and while still powerful, it's lost that beauty? Do not call me, woe unto you, mother of sons, for you remind me of the lions of the thicket. They were my sons by whom I was once called, but today I have become without any sons at all. 4 of them, like falcons of the highlands, met death with their hearts and veins cut through. The spears fought over their scattered limbs, each of them left slain, pierced, and wounded. Oh, if only I knew, is it true as they told me, that Abbas has been left with his veins severed? Now, show of hands, honestly, who felt this was poetic? Maybe a little bit, right? But it's not as beautiful as the Arabic is. The Arabic portrays much more emotion. And that's the problem we run into when trying to create poetry in English. We're trying to take the classical Arabic poetry, as I should say, and make it into English. It just doesn't work in the same way. It feels like it's missing something. And so I feel like we have a duty to take that same beauty that is available in Arabic, in Farsi, in Urdu, and translate it to English. Therefore, I've written my own rendition of this. I've written my own poetry in honor of al-Banin. And it might be a little bit, it might not be the best poetry there is out there. I don't claim to be a poet. But this is just to show you that I believe that we as a community can be doing more for the eulogy of Imam Hussein, for the eulogy of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Because we've run into an issue where a lot of people like to say, well, I get nervous when I come up to speak. I don't know how to stand in front of a crowd and deliver a lecture. But then my question is, why do you feel the need to come up here? If you don't feel like you can come up here, many of us are good writers. Many of us have a very good understanding of the English language, having grown up speaking this language. Why not be a writer? Why not write eulogies for the love of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? And so I'm going to read you my rendition, and it might not be the best, but it'll be more poetic than the English translation while keeping that same meaning. Don't call me, woe to me, al-Baneen anymore. You remind me of lions who roared, who are no more. Once I had sons, mighty and brave. By their names honor to me they gave. Today I stand alone in my pain, a mother of sons, but none remain. For I bore like eagles of the sky, strong of arm and fierce of cry. They guarded the truth, bore no fear, but fate has claimed them far and near. O Abbas, they called you the moon of Bani Hashim's night. You shone on Karbala with your valorous light. Your arms were severed by treacherous swords. Your standard fell. Your eyes saw no gourd. Woe to my Abbas by the river so near. He died with thirst, his chest seared. Woe upon the one who bore the standard high, who fell by the banks as angels cried. O my sons, Ja'far, Uthman, and Abdullah too, my heart is torn remembering you. How brave you stood by Hussein's side, how valiantly you fought till you died. No mother has given all she bore, but I gave my sons, and still gave more. For I ask not of my Abbas first, nor of the sons who fell in the dirt. My cry, my wail, my bleeding heart's plea, tell me of Hussein, where is he? Did they leave him alone beneath the burning sun? Was his sacred blood mercilessly run? Did he cry for help no ear would heed? Did his children watch him in dire need? O people of Medina, I beg you say, how was Hussein on that dreadful day? Don't call me, woe to me, Baneen anymore. My sons are gone to the dust of war. I remember my Abbas by the river's side. I remember Hussein left alone, no one beside. I remember the tents in flames, the children's cries, the severed heads raised to the skies. O eyes, shed tears until you're blind, for the tragedies I leave behind. My sons are martyrs, I proclaim with pride, yet my soul breaks for Hussein who died. So let me weep by the graves unseen. No longer call me Baneen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Well, I don't pride myself on being the best poet. I don't pride myself on being a poet at all. It took me 5, maybe 6 hours of sitting down and actually really thinking. And I was able to come up with a few lines for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And it holds more beauty than if you were to just take the Arabic and translate it. It transmits more of the meaning. And that's the goal, my brothers and sisters. That's the goal. Keeping the musibah, the tragedy of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam alive. When we really think about it, this is a family that's given us everything. This is a family that has given us who we are as a people. Without them, we wouldn't have our identity as the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt. And so we deserve to cry for them. They deserve us to cry for them. And now I'm going to, inshallah, open it up to a discussion. Hopefully you guys kind of have some questions brewing. I know people are shy of raising their hands and asking questions, but if you don't, I'll be forced to call on you. So either way, you'll be answering a question. So maybe poke your friends to get them to volunteer before you get volunteered. Okay, question number 1. Why do you think poetry was such a central part of pre-Islamic Arabian culture? And how does that legacy shape our rituals today? Yes. Mm-hmm. So you're essentially saying that the Arabic language has more depth. Mm-hmm. That's a very important point to touch on. One of the reasons that we haven't seen English poetry or Noha or Marsiya or whatever you want to call it evolve in the same way that Arabic and Urdu and Farsi have is that you'll see that a lot of these more classical languages, they have more interchangeable parts. You can switch out a lot of words and still have that same meaning. And some words have multiple meanings. And so it's much easier to create that pattern when we look at the English language. It's kind of like each word has its own purpose. And it has like 1 or 2 meanings, and it's kind of hard to swap them out. And in Arabic, there's like 10 different words for one meaning. They all mean the exact same thing, but there's 10 different ways to say it. And so it's much easier to kind of find that tune and find that rhythm. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
There's something interesting about pre-Islamic Arabian culture. From our modern perspective, oftentimes you expect the uneducated or the people at the periphery of the civilization to be the most the most unintellectually developed. But when you go to the pre-Islamic Arabia, it's actually the opposite, where a lot of times, because these groups had this powerful language and had so much time, being people in the desert that stared at their camels all day, they were able to ponder a lot, and they were able to develop really, really sophisticated poetry. And because writing wasn't big, they would use that as almost passing memorized chunks of information instead of booklets or brand new.
Definitely. I totally agree. It's interesting how when people look at the Arabian people, they're like, oh, these were barbarians. They were barbaric, they were uncivilized. But then they had some of the most beautiful words come out of that era, some of the most beautiful writing come out of that era, some of the most beautiful poetry that comes out of that era. But one of the things that I wanted to touch upon that you said, as you put it, they had time to stare at their camels and think, right? That's something we don't do today. Something we don't do today. If you really think about the last time you sat down for more than 30 seconds, for a good 15, 20, 30 minutes and just thought without doing anything else, it's probably been a long time, huh? Because nowadays we need to have 3 screens, right? You got a movie on one screen, a TV show on another one, and TikTok on the third, right? And you got to be overstimulated at all times with so many different sounds and so many different images and ideas that you don't really just sit and think. You don't really take the time to just think. And I feel like if we did, we'd be able to create a lot more art as a community. We'd be able to honor the Ahlul Bayt a lot better. Yes, ma'am? Do any of the sisters want to speak up? No. Okay, go ahead.
What I want to bring up is maybe what we seem to be talking about here is materialist lens we look at, and how like something like you just mentioned, like today, everything is, like you're looking at what everyone else has. You're looking at how much like money will this make me? What position will this put me in? There's not really as much, like everything has to have some very explicit purpose for the sake of furthering yourself in the material sense. But then, if we're looking back, like that's like one way we can find the difference between like maybe let's say Western culture versus, and we are seeing like Middle Eastern cultures today, but like with the pre-Islamic Arabia, something else I'm trying to also think of is in the past, like yes, it was a intersection, the crossroads of all these different cultures coming together. We all know that history, and I think something we're also thinking of here is with that, so you have like the combination of these ideas in a like I don't want to say pre-materialist society, but that's probably the best way to describe it. It's kind of those two very together. Now you have very rich language.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think you're totally right. I feel like materialism has a lot to play in that, right? Because you're always trying to take the next step. You're always trying to take the next leap, and you're never satisfied with where you're at. And I feel like a big part that plays into that is a lot of people are afraid of creating or afraid of kind of letting their creative juices flow because they're scared they're not going to be the best at it. And everyone's so worried and so attached with being the best at everything. I have to be the best speaker. I have to be the best poet. I have to be the best lawyer, the best doctor, and so on and so forth. They're never okay with just trying and seeing where it goes. You're not going to be a rock star on your first time. Like, it's not going to be awesome on your first time. Your first poem might suck. Your second one might suck. Your third one might suck. Mine still suck. But eventually you'll get the hang of it. Eventually it starts getting better. Right? I mean, when you look at your favorite poets out there right now, promise you they weren't that great on day one. It took years upon years of practice, finding their words, learning how to twist those words to become good at it. And so yeah, the materialistic lens does ruin us from that standpoint because we always want to be number one and nobody wants to try anymore. Because everyone thinks if I'm not good at it, I failed. But here's the truth about failure. You only fail when you stop trying. If you continue to try, you haven't failed yet. Still trying. It's when you give up, when you stop climbing the mountain, that's when you fail to climb the mountain. But even if you fall down that mountain 100 times, you keep getting back up every single time, you're still just trying to climb the mountain. You haven't failed yet. Anyone else before we move on to the next question? Anyone? I'm picking on the girls next, by the way, so one of you be ready to answer. Okay, question number 2. What makes the poetry and arts of Karbala different from other forms of arts, i.e. music that we hear nowadays? I kind of already talked about this, guys, so I'm giving you like an easy one. Anyone? Mahdi? It is. It's not only a call to action, it's a remembrance. Right? It's a way of keeping the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam alive. Right? And so the goal behind it is much deeper than the goal behind music. You listen to music to pass time. You listen to music to get happy or get sad. There's a much deeper mission behind listening to latmiyas, behind creating eulogy for Imam Hussein, behind listening to poetry for Imam Hussein in Karbala. And that's keeping that mission alive, keeping that legacy alive, keeping that flame going. Now, I want one of the ladies to answer, or I'm eeny, meeny, miny, mowing and choosing one of you on random. So before I do that, one of you answer. Yes. I definitely agree. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I definitely agree. I think exactly. It's about, like I said, keeping something alive, right? It's got depth there. It's got meaning to it. It means something, right? When we think about who these people were, when we think about the depth of this tragedy, and I'll continue after a lot of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If that was your loudest, I'm worried for you guys. Once again, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll let it go, but we're doing this again, and I expect it to be louder. Again, like you said, it's about that depth, right? When we really analyze who was on the battlefield of Karbala. Alhamdulillah, it's been a few days, it's been a few years that I've had the honor for reciting the Majlis of Abi Abdullah Hussein. So I've gotten very familiar with the story. Read the details over and over and over again. Very gruesome details. But there's also almost a message of hope that's in there. You might think, are you crazy? You know how the story ends, right? They all die. What are you talking about, hope? But when you look at a young boy like Al-Qasim, 13, 14 years old, the son of Imam al-Hassan, when his uncle Imam Hussein asks him, my son Qasim, how do you see death? Can anyone tell me his answer? He says, أحلى من العسل, sweeter than honey. Imagine, 13, 14-year-old boy that looks death in the face and says it is sweeter than honey. You look at Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar was the oldest son of Imam Hussein. Some people say it was Imam Zayn al-Abidin. It was actually Ali al-Akbar when you look back at the history. He asks his father, says, Ya abata, alasna al-haq? Oh my father, are we not on the path of truth? Imam Hussein responds, Na'am, inna al-haq. Yes, we are on the path of truth. He says, إِذَنْ لَا نُبَالِي بِالْمَوْتِ مَا دُمْنَا عَلَى الْحَقِّ. Then we do not fear death as long as we are on the path of truth. Again, a young man, 27, 28 years old. He looks death in the face and he says, I'm on the path of truth. What am I worrying about? Yeah? You look at someone like Zuhair ibn Qayn. Zuhair ibn Qayn was one of the companions of Imam Hussein. And the reports say he was an old man at this point. And so before the battle began, he was having second thoughts about if he was going to join the battle. Because he's old, right? He's almost going to die anyways. Wants to enjoy the last few years of his life. Not go die on a battlefield and be brutally murdered. But then he goes to the path of Imam Hussein. And before the night of Ashura, before the day of Ashura, the Imam snuffs out a candle. And he tells his companions, oh my companions, you're free to go. You can leave. Tomorrow you are going to die. That is promise. And if you don't want to die, you can leave. All I ask is you take one of the women of my family with you when you leave. He turns the candle back on. Zuhair is standing there. And Zuhair looks at the Imam and he says, oh Imam, if I was to be killed and my body was to be cut into pieces and they burned my body and scattered those ashes and that was to happen 1,000 times over, I would die for you every time. That is the message that is being carried in these eulogies. That is the remembrance that is being carried in these eulogies. Courage, honor, loyalty. Stuff that the world lacks nowadays. The world really lacks these morals nowadays. You look at the leaders of the so-called Muslim world. How many of them have those? 2, 3, 4? And any of them that do are from the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Right? What's Saudi Arabia doing right now? Shaking hands with Israel? Making business deals? What's Qatar doing? What's Emirat doing? What are Jordan and Morocco and so on and so forth doing? Sitting back, allowing a famine to happen? Is that not what the people of Umayyah, Bani Umayyah did to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Is that not what the people of Kufa did to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Is that not what the people of Sham did? Is that not what the majority of the Muslim world did to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? The world is cyclical, my brothers and sisters. Patterns repeat over and over and over again. The same thing just keeps happening over and over and over again. You have to open your eyes to that truth. And so the message we fight for is a timeless message. It's one that we can't let die. And it would be unfortunate and sad to allow a message like that to die. Third question I have for you guys. Again, I want a lady to answer. Different lady this time. Do you think that the eulogies, latamiyas, marsiyas, whatever you want to call them, are more for the living, to connect us spiritually to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the Ahlul Bayt, or for honoring the dead, or for a mix of both? And why? Anyone? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Anyone else? Anyone? I know you guys think, like, I need you to work with me here.
I can also add on, it's also a way for us to mourn history and to mourn, because if we don't do these martyrs and if we don't recite these and like the poetry and stuff, it would all go into vain and people would forget about it, and it's a way of like commemorating and almost reliving in a way, because if you just talk about it, you don't really get that sense of like feeling and emotion to what happened with the Battle of Karbala, but like reciting these poetries and Messiah and all of that helps you like get more emotional and in depth into what is happening.
Definitely. Thank you. I definitely think what you're saying is true, right? It not only connects us to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, it's also connecting us, like I said, to what's happening right now, right? You mentioned what if it was to happen to your own children. Well, it is happening to people's children today. I mean, the videos we're seeing come out of Palestine, the videos we saw come out of Lebanon, the videos we saw come out of Iran were horrifying. Things you never thought you'd see before in your life. Things that are unimaginable. I mean, there was a video circulating of a father who was walking back with the birth certificates of his newborn twins from the hospital. And on his way back, he's met with the news that his newborn twins and his wife were just in a building that was bombed and they're dead now. And he's holding the certificates for their birth. Those certificates never reached home. They never got home. There was another photo circulating of a man who was so food deprived that you could see his spine through his stomach. You could legitimately see his entire spine through his stomach. Imagine the state that body has to be in for that to happen. Imagine how long that body has to go without food for that to happen. Things that are unimaginable. Things that are horrifying. Things that give you nightmares and keep you up at night. That's currently what we're witnessing. Yet why are we surprised? Why are we surprised? Did the same not happen to the family of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? Did the same not happen to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Why are we surprised? Why are we surprised?
I don't know really answer, but I feel like for some people there's a belief that we've come so far from the Karbala that it's that cruelty, like seeing that cruelty is impossible to have again. Like we've transcended the cruelty of back then. But like you were talking about earlier, these events don't happen in a vacuum. Like that is the same way Ahmed Bait was standing up to tyranny, to justice oppression. We still see these other resistance groups are still fighting with the same. Like these are very contemporary parallels.
Definitely. The parallels are there, and they're very clear to see. I mean, when people talk about children being murdered, babies being murdered, I think back to a طفل الرضيع. And I think if they had the ability to do it back then, of course the sons of Yazid are doing it again. There's a reason we have the quote, كل يوم عاشوراء وكل أرض كربلاء. That every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala. Because these things continue to happen over and over and over and over and over again. And they will continue to happen. And it's up to us to keep that message alive, to keep it going. Muhsin, how long have they gone? Cool. Number 4. How does creative expression, poetry, art, Batmiyas, help us keep the message of Imam Hussein alive across generations? This is an easy one. Very easy one. I know you guys are thinking. Yes.
Kind of a generic answer, but I think it kind of sort of like it helps people who are not experienced with that knowledge. It helps people who aren't like fully knowledgeable of what happened understand what happened through a medium that they enjoy.
I think so, definitely. I think one of the benefits of having this is that one of the easiest things to fall into is listening to music. It's very easy. Sounds good, makes you feel good, right? When you're sad, it helps you cry. It's very easy to fall into. It's very, very easy to fall into. But like you said, there's also a benefit to that, which is that when you have something that's in the same rhythm, and obviously we're never comparing music and this, right? They're completely two different things, and you wouldn't compare them. But when you have something that has a rhythm, when you have the latmiya, when you have something like that, it's much easier for people to connect with. It's much easier to get that message across than it would be, for example, in a lecture, right? Most people, it's tough for them to sit in a 30, 45-minute lecture, but they can do latam for 30, 45 minutes. They can listen to Marsiya for 30, 45 minutes. Believe me, I've experienced it. This Muharram, the community that I was at, they would do 45 minutes of Marsiya before the program, 45 minutes of latam after the program, with a 50-minute speech in between, right? People can do that for days on end. They're happy to listen to that. Why? Because it gets you going. It sounds good. It engages you, right? And so it's a better way of getting the message across. It's a better way of introducing the people to that message. Anyone else? I'm going to start picking at people at random. So you either raise your hands or you're getting picked on. Going once, going twice, going 3 times, your friend's pointing at you. Hey, your friend's pointing at you, so you can both answer or one of you answers. Yeah. So the question again was, how does creative expression help us keep the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam alive across generations?
I don't remember what anyone else did, but I think it's also easy to, you can play it wherever, and I do think that if people have like short attention span, sorry, it's really loud. Yeah, if someone has like a short attention span, it's easy to, or if they can't listen to long, if they can't listen to long lectures, then it's just easy to have.
Hey, you contributed, so thank you for that. I definitely agree. I think it gets people connected. It gets people moving. I'll do one final question, and then I'll do my closing, and then I'll end because I think it's been almost an hour, maybe like 45 minutes ish. So I'll do one more question, and then, inshallah, from there, we'll close. In what ways can we bring the spirit of Karbala into modern artistic forms without losing its sanctity? And what I mean by losing its sanctity is touching on one specific topic. When I began with the mas'ala of music, why is it forbidden, why is it haram? You see, there's a caveat that it's not exactly about the words, but it's about, would this be listened to in majalisillah, right? Gatherings of entertainment. And there's this new trend going around where people will take a latmiya and they'll put a trap beat behind it. And all of a sudden it sounds like you're in a disco. And it sounds like you want to get up and you want to start dancing. Those are, by all meaning, haram. 100% haram. I don't care if they're screaming the name of Imam Ali at the top of their lungs. They can continue to scream. It's haram. Right? And we all know exactly what I'm talking about without me even having to say it. Because it's infiltrated everywhere. Right? And it gets millions upon millions upon millions of views. Right? 100 million, 200 million, 300 million in like 3 weeks. Why? Because it sounds like a disco beat. It does. It sounds like I'm in a club all of a sudden. And so my question is, but people have done that to engage the youth, right? Especially when you look at, for example, Iraq or Iran. Iraq or Iran are having a big problem in which the youth want to westernize themselves. They no longer want to be classically Iraqi or classically Iranian. I'm sure the same thing's happening in Lebanon. I'm sure it's happening in Pakistan as well and wherever else. But the youth want to westernize themselves. And so now these people, these reciters who normally recite from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they go and they try to make their latmiya as Western as possible. They will try to connect with the youth. And for that to work, they throw a disco beat on it. And now everyone's listening to it. Now all of these guys are coming in and they're jumping around and they're doing whatever. Right? The issue with that is, yes, now you got the crowd, but you remove the sanctity from it. It's no longer about mourning. It's no longer about preserving the message like we spoke about. Now it's just about having a good time. And that's not what latmiyas are about. That's not what eulogy is about. And so how do we preserve that sanctity? Yes.
I just had a question for latmiyas. I've heard a lot of super upbeat ones. Are they not supposed to be upbeat? When I think of latmiya, I think of like very like.
I know what you're talking about, and I know we've gotten to a point where now some latmiyas have blurred the line between a nasheed and a latmiya. It's like I'm listening to the words and they're supposed to be sad, but then it's this beat that makes me want to start clapping. Where's the connect? I'm confused now. It's disconnected. And yeah, so latmiyas are supposed to be sadder, right? It's supposed to be something you can cry to, not something that makes you want to put it on at your wedding, right? And a lot of these are like, dude, I need to put this on my wedding playlist. But it's a latmiya. Why do you have a latmiya playing at your wedding? God knows. Right? But that's what it's made for. And so how do we continue to push eulogies into the modern age? How do we continue to evolve eulogies for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam while preserving that sanctity? Yes. Yes.
Maybe try to integrate the Alchemia into a more like into an art that kind of evokes emotion other than, you know, what you just said, the trap beat or the disco or whatever.
Mhm.
Because in the end of the day, Mia is like kind of a, from my understanding, it's more of like a, you know, a remembrance or a mourning, right?
Mhm.
So maybe sort of integrate that into a different form of art. Because surely that's related more to, you know, our remembrance or, you know, stuff like that.
So I was gonna ask, this is kind of like a question I guess for everybody. You said a second ago, like there's this move to have, you know, more, let's say, trap style beats, and it looks me like, so like why is that? Like why do we want to have this? Like what's the appeal of it?
To bring in the youth. Right.
But I think so. So why is that the case? Because of like what influence?
Because of the American influence.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
the Western influence.
Yeah.
So I would argue, and this is what you kind of talked about earlier. You know, that materialism we talked about earlier, kind of like just being able to step back and play it a little bit. Don't think so much about every like kind of just sit on the message itself, reflect on that. I feel like it's something we're not really able to. Like, yes, there are ways you can find to make the art form more, I don't want to say enticing, but perhaps easier to absorb, easier to understand for a new generation that may have a limited attention span, sure. But at the same time, you also need to teach this new generation, like this generation, they have their own challenges, but so did, you know, tens of 20 generations beforehand to do the same thing. So I would say that this is more of a, it's not just the medium we're using for the art form, but also the people, the audiences that we need to help them find ways to really be able to absorb the message themselves before we talk about being more appealing to them. Because that's how they're going to really want to learn about what happened.
I definitely agree. Yes.
So I think the most important strategy is to educate the youth instead of attracting them. Then, yes, doing Latvian is very important, because that's paying respect to the activists. But then you also need to know that's only the external expression of our faith. It's not the main core. Like I've seen so many centers that have the people who never show up to regular Jum'ah or Dua Kumet, but they will show up like every day during Muharram, especially during Ashura. Like you go to any center, you see the attendance on the day of Ashura is at least double or triple. Because they think, crying for Imam Hussein, the beating the chest is gonna basically strengthen our Shia identity. But then where is your Shia identity coming from? It's from the faith, the very faith, the foundation of the faith. So without education, the faith is not gonna be prolonged because you only do this and you have nothing to offer to the offspring. It's not going to survive.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. I really liked what you said, that you kind of, you find ways to integrate them even better. And I'll touch upon that in a second. Yes.
Can I elaborate?
Go ahead.
See, the thing is, I was thinking more about like art as in visual art, kind of like a mural or a painting. But the thing is, I feel like it's more of the audience that kind of skews it to their sort of like to what they're intrigued in, right? Because like about the whole like westernizing thing, that's I feel like that's more of the culture or of the audience's fault, sort of. So yes, I feel like there are ways that we can to remember Muharram and all that. You know, yeah, I think there are ways to commemorate that, but you know, there are keep in mind that the audience can skew it to what they find entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yes. Definitely. I think connecting Ashura to what's happening today is very important because, and I'm going to talk more about this on Sunday, actually shameless plug, show up on Sunday, because we'll be talking more about how to get spiritually connected with Karbala and with Ashura. And so it's something we'll get into more, inshallah, on Sunday. But it's definitely a very important point. I liked what you brought up, right? Getting out of trying to be Western, right? We shouldn't be Western. I'm not saying don't integrate, right? I'm not saying be a weirdo and don't talk to anybody and don't integrate in society. No, we live in this country and need to integrate in society, right? We have to interact with people. We can't just be hermits, sit at home and only interact with our own community. No, it doesn't work like that. But do not value Western values over your own values. Don't ever do that. It's one of the worst things you can ever do for yourself. Because Western values have no morality. They have no boundaries. They have no adab. They have no manners. They don't. They don't. We come from a culture that's built on values, firm, strong values. All of us. Doesn't matter what country you're from, you come from a culture built on values, built on manners, built on respect, built on honor. Those things don't exist in Western society. They don't. They don't exist in American culture. There's no honor. There's no values. There's no manners. There's none of that. One of the best things you can do for yourself is reconnect with your home. Reconnect with who you are, either as a Muslim, but also with your cultural home. I moved to Iraq almost a year ago. September it'll be a year. Which is crazy to think that it's been a year, because it does not feel like a year. If you asked me 3 months before I moved if I would ever leave California, I would give you the hardest no of my entire life. I was a California boy, born and raised, and I would be for the rest of my life. And then in the blink of an eye, I picked everything up and moved 7,000 miles away. And now I live across the globe. And I've never been happier in my life. And I had this realization in Muharram. And I can tell you the exact moment I had that realization. I was sitting in my hotel room in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had a hotel room that overlooked the Husayniyah. The hotel was here, the Husayniyah was here. And so as I would pace back and forth in my hotel room, preparing my lecture, I'd be looking at the Husayniyah. And I remember coming back home from the Majlis one night. It was probably around midnight, because that's when I'd get back to my hotel room. And I was exhausted, I was tired, I was lonely, I was homesick, and I wanted to go home, and it was only night one. Right? I had 11 more nights of this to get through, but I wanted to go home already. But at the same time, I was feeling more fulfilled than I had ever felt in my life. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had granted me the ability and the blessing to serve Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. And in that moment, I realized I wanted to chase that fulfillment. I wanted that to be a feeling that I had all the time, 24/7. And I thought, how can I do that? And there was a little voice in the back of my head that told me, move. Get up and leave. And I said, that's insane. It's insane. I am American through and through. I don't know how to live in Iraqi society. I don't know how to live with Iraqis. I barely speak the language. I can get by with broken Arabic. I barely speak the language. But then I did it. And I never looked back. And do I want to eventually move back here? Yes. This is and will always be my home. But I'm also more comfortable there than I am here now. Just now. Because I put behind everything here. All of the distractions. Because that's what life here in the West is. It's just distraction after distraction after distraction after distraction. If you work a 9 to 5, you wake up, you go to work, you come home, you go to sleep, you do it all over again. And you're stuck in the cycle of just working, waiting for the weekend. Yes.
When you say like connect to your culture, what's like an example? Just like some cultures, they use like some cultural practices, and they like try to put like, oh, it's part of Islam, but it's not. It's more of a cultural practice. Like when you say you connect to your culture.
I don't exactly mean mix Islam and your culture, right? Because I think those are two very distinct things. You have a cultural personality and your Islamic personality. You have cultural rules and Islamic rules. And if those ever clash, you choose your Islamic rules first, right? But it's much easier to get connected to Islam in our home countries, right? Because you're not living this lifestyle of distraction. You're more grounded. You have more time to think. I kid you not, the day lasts longer there. Genuinely, the day lasts longer there. I get up at 5 a.m. every day, I pray Fajr, I shower, I go to classes, I come back at Dhuhr, 12. I pray Dhuhr, I take a nap. I wake up fully rested. I feel like I've slept 8 hours and it's 1 p.m. And I'm like, what am I going to do with the rest of my day? And so I go, I see some friends. I sit down, I go to the shrine, I read some dua, I read some Quran. Again, I look at the clock, it's 3:30. And I'm like, when is Maghrib going to come? Because you just have more time there. Why? Because the time has barakah there. There's blessings there. Our time doesn't have barakah here, my brothers and sisters. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Honestly, tell me, it doesn't feel like yesterday was Monday. Does it not? Like, where'd the week go? Because we're just so distracted here over and over and over and over and over again. So connect to your roots. Remember who you are. You are the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt. You are the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Remember what those values mean. Courage, honor, generosity, valor. Connect to those things. And don't let them go. That's how we succeed. And start writing for the Ahlul Bayt. Start doing more for the Ahlul Bayt. Like I said, maybe you won't be amazing at it the first time. But if you can draw for the Ahlul Bayt. If you can write poetry for the Ahlul Bayt. If you can speak for the Ahlul Bayt. Do whatever you can in whatever capacity you can. If you're good at planning things, plan a majlis for the Ahlul Bayt. We all have a part to play. We all have a part to play. Find your part to play and play it. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us that connection we all seek with the Ahlul Bayt. Grants us that closeness to the Ahlul Bayt. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us the opportunity to go to their shrines. Because going to their shrines is one of the most magical feelings you will ever experience. Genuine. I don't know if this is too niche. Obviously this feeling's gone now because they're genocidal maniacs and I don't agree with that. But Disneyland. You guys remember the first time you ever went to Disneyland? Show of hands, who remembers the first time they ever went to Disneyland? Anybody who's been to Disneyland remembers their first time going to Disneyland. Because it's a memory you don't forget, right? It's the most magical place on earth. Now you can't go there anymore because it's like, do I really want my money going to this? I don't know anymore. But before, it used to be the most magical place on earth, right? That is literally Ziyah. It's the most magical place on earth. You don't ever forget your first time. And when you go for the first time, you want to keep going. You get back and you are exhausted, you're sick, you're homesick, you just want to call in bed. And then as you're going to sleep, you go, man, I wish I was back. It's really how it is. So I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us all the opportunity to go there. And before I end, one more shameless plug, show up on Sunday. It'll be good, I promise you.
Remind them what it is.
What is it?
Bonfire, we will be talking about how to get spiritually closer to the message of Karbala, the message of Ashura and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So it'll almost be a continuation of this. We'll be talking more, but it'll be more in depth, right? We're going to get emotional. I can't promise you won't cry because you probably will. But yeah, we're definitely going to get more emotional. We're going to get more in depth, inshallah. We're going to have good food, good friends, good weather, and a good time, inshallah. And we'd love to see you all there. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد